Homeland of Lat Gemara. Today's daf on Monday is daf Chav Zayin in Sanhedrin. So we're moving on. Itmar, we learned a famous machlekes between Abaye and Rava. Eid Zaymim. So two Eidim came in, gave us some testimony, and then another two Eidim came in and said, perhaps the events that you described occurred, but you were not around there to see it, witness it, because you were with us elsewhere. Abaya Amar Adin is that we believe the second pair, and the first pair is not only discredited, but they will get punished. Whatever they try to mete out to that innocent person, that will be their punishment. So the question is, what happens in the month of Nisan? They gave their testimony in court, but they weren't found guilty for another 2 months. Let's say it's the month of Sivan. So how far back does their credibility get questioned? All the testimonies that they gave between the time that they gave the original testimony and the time they were caught out is no longer valued and is tossed out of Bezdin because they were puzzled. Turned out to be that they were liars from the moment they gave their initial testimony. And the Rabbi says, no, they're only puzzled now when they were caught out. And all the testimonies that they gave between the month of Nisan and Sivan are acceptable. Now, what's the crux of their argument? The moment they gave the original testimony, they were liars because it was never true. The Torah says, you should not be a party with a Russia when it comes to stealing. So we interpreted Al-Tosh's Russia aid, that a Russia should not be treated as a witness. We should not entertain what they say. But Rava says, it makes sense. What's Rava's argument? That is from now on, it's not retrospective. And why is that? Because Eid Zaymim Chiddush, the entire concept of an Eid Zaymim is a Chiddush. The fact that we believe the second one, the fact that we don't believe the first one, they're showing and saying maybe it's not a Chiddush. But the fact that we believe the second one, we know when witnesses contradict two contradictions, they're called Eid HaChosha. And we had a machlekes Rabba Rab Chizda whether we believe them on future testimonies because we haven't really proven which one is false, or Rab Chizda says they're not believed. But the fact that we believe the second one completely, in all cases, is a chiddush. And why? Because my thought is the samcha dahani is marchani. Why believe the second, not the first? And therefore, whenever you have a chiddush, ein Allah boy elam mishas kedusha ve'elech. We only will treat it that it's no good from the moment of the chiddush, now from the moment that the second pair of witnesses came along, because really we don't know who to believe. But the Torah said this is how it is, so we follow the Torah, but only from the moment that they were caught out lying for the month of Sivan. The halacha is here going to be like a Bible. We'll see in a minute, and the Tur explains in Shulchan Aruch that there's a logic to Abaye because it's not really a chiddush. Why? It's no different than they accuse, as we'll see in a minute in the Gemara. It's no different than saying that the first pair of Eidim are Ganadim. And then the first pair of Eidim are no longer believed because they cannot defend themselves because they're negated of it. The same thing is when the second group says that you were not there at the time to make that testimony, it's as if they're saying that you were people like Aslanim or whatever, that you're liars, and therefore they cannot defend themselves anymore. Ikidamri, so there's a logic to it. To Abaye. Others say Rabba, Rabba holds like Abaye principle about that should be retrospective. It's a special takonos chachamim. We decided not to make it retrospective. Ma tam ka'aman. What's the reason? Why do we say that's from now on? We should say the lukuchas. We don't want the lukuchas to lose out. My benai. What's the difference between these two reasons? Ika benai. The difference would be as he the beitzei bechad. What happens if two witnesses come along? Now Rashi learns if two witnesses come against the one witness and another two witnesses come against the other, and both of them say that you were not here at the time, but there's two against one in each case. So if the point is because it's a chiddush, and therefore it only starts from the time the chiddush, no chiddush anymore, it's two against one. But if it's because we made a special takana to benefit the people who purchased, anybody who purchased the property between Nisan and Sivan, it's not fair. They had no idea that these witnesses were lying and they used them. Why should they lose out? If that's the reason, then regardless that you had two against one, we will still say it's only mekana lahabo. Many Rishonim don't like Rashi Pshat because they say that when it comes to witnesses, it makes no difference if it's two against 100. We're not going to give any more credibility to 100 over 2. So it's 2 against 4, the same thing. And therefore, they just avoided as Hidu Beit 2 came along and said to one of the witnesses that you are not valid anymore. Or they're only mazim one witness. So in this case, that's it. So therefore, there's no longer two Adim over here, and it's a logical thing, 2 against 1, that you weren't there at the time. But Rashi seems to be learning, and Rambam is learning Rashi as well, that since it's 2 against 1, and 2 against 1 as 2 separate groups, we don't treat it like the aggregate's 2 against 4. It's 2 against 1 separately, and therefore it only makes sense to listen to the 2 rather than the 1. Says the Gemara, a puppy once followed the Rav, the Marbar Rabashi Amar, Hirchas came along Marbar Rabashi's son, they said, no, the halacha like Abaye. In fact, the rule is, throughout Shas, Abaye is everywhere. There are no 3 pages in Shas without Abaye's name there. Or rather, the halacha is like Abaye in these 6 instances. Yal Kagam. And the Yud stands for Yeyu Shalom B'das, which we had above Mitzir, that if somebody lost something and he wasn't aware of it, but had he known, he would have given up hope. And the Ayin is Eid Zaymim. Mafreyu Nifsum, we follow Abaye. Says the Gemara, we have another interesting argument when we say that you should accept a witness that, let's say, has a weakness for money. What about a witness that is a Rasha? The pasuk says, we said before, the pasuk says, "Al toshes yodcha im Rasha," and we dashen al toshes Rasha aid. What kind of Rasha are we referring to? Are we specifically referring to a Rasha as a weakness for money, so we cannot trust him, or we're talking about a Rasha b'chal, a Rasha committed an aid? Is a Rasha we cannot use him as an aid? It'll be a machlekes between Abaye and Rava. Interesting, the Gemara is going to treat stealing far worse than eating treif. Why is that? When you're eating treif, who you're harming? Only Hashem, your relation with Hashem. So that's called Ra L'Shamayim. When you are, let's say, stealing from somebody, you're actually committing 2 sins. You're harming your relation with Hashem, and you're harming your relation with other people because it's an Avera. So it's Ra L'Shamayim because you're doing an Avera, and it's Ra L'Brius, also hurting people because you're stealing. So stealing is far worse than eating treif. So this is going to be the argument. If somebody was caught out, let's say, lying when it comes to a lesser Avera, can we automatically surmise that he'll also lie when it comes to a stricter Avera? And for example, if we caught somebody was caught out eating treif, which is a smaller Avera, you're only affecting Hashem, does that automatically mean that his credibility is shot and we will not trust him when it comes to money matters, even though that's a much stricter Avera, maybe people take it more seriously. And that is going to be another argument between Abaye and Rav. Says the Gemara, Mumer Oichel Nevele. If a Mumer eats Neveles, let's say oven, if a Mumer eats Nevele because he has a desire for it, he likes it, pleasure. If pleasure trumps halacha, then that means he cannot trust him for money, for money matters, because maybe he'll be paid off. And pleasure is more important to him than any halacha. So we really cannot trust it. Okay. Okay, so he's doing it in spite. Eating treif in spite. He's doing only around Shemayim, but not affecting other people. Abaye apostle, you cannot trust him for money matters as well, even though it's a stricter Avera, because Rala Shemayim, Rala Brias, once you're established as a Rasha, that's it, you no longer accept it. And the Rava says kosher. Allah, by the way, here is like Abaye, and that's the mem from Yal Kagam, is a mumer lahachis. Abaye apostle, Abaye says apostle Dabli Rasha. He's a Rasha. You can't have a Rasha testifying. And the Rava says kosher. Why is it kosher? Because what kind of a Rasha is not acceptable? A Rasha, the Chamas being only a Rasha that has a weakness for money. And a lahachis, a mumma lahachis, don't do with money. It's principle. Meisrael asks a question for Tarab. Al Tosha Rasha Aid. It says Al Tosha is Chamas Aid. Who are they? Elu Gazlan. These are examples. A Gazlan, okay, that's Rala Shemaim Rala Brius. This is what the Rava says. But also Moilim B'Shvuos. Right? They breach their vows. It's in plural. What are the 2 different kinds of vows that we incorporate in the word Shvuos? My love. Echad Shvuas Shav. One is to a Shvuas Shav is that you are a wasted Shvuah, a Shvuah that it's in vain. For example, I swear that this stone is a stone. That's called a Shvuah Shav. And then there's a shvuah, and a shvuah of a lie is if you say, "Oh, I swear that this stone is gold." Okay, that's a lie. But these are two examples of a shvuah which have nothing to do with no weakness for money. It's between you and Hashem. It's only Ra'al Shemaim. So my lab, what are these multiple shvuahs? Echad shvuah shav, and the other one shvuah's moment. Or you swore false about money. So we see that we expand. It's beyond money. But there's no proof. It's not a question of Rabbi whose limits it only to shvuah the chamas, only to do a rush of chamas of stealing. Either be the shvuah. Both shvuahs to do with money. So Ra'al Shemaim and Ra'al Brius. So why they're written in plural? My shvuah down. We're talking about in general, shvuas, in argument, that if somebody swears false, but what kind of matters it pertains to? Money matters, and that's why we don't trust them. But if, let's say, they have a weakness for a mumma lahachis, they eat treif to spite, for example, not letiyavim, but to spite, they can be trusted then to to give kosher ages. But if they mumma letiyavim, they eat because they enjoy treif, which means a pleasure to them is more important than the mitzvahs and the Torah, then we cannot trust them when it comes to giving ages. Okay, now I'll ask a question about it. Makes a question. Al Toshes Rosh Eid, Al Toshes, it says in the Braisa, Al Toshes Chamas, say this is clearly it's limited to Chamas. Only what kind of Russia to do with money, has a weakness for money. So therefore, they might be corruptible. Eilan, he gives examples. Kazlanin, Umal Veribi is somebody who lends money and interest. To Yufta the Abaye said any Russian, here it seems to be only a Russian Chamas. To Yufta repudiate Abaye. So at this stage, the Gemara actually rejects Abaye. And we'll soon see, interesting, we have the Tiyufta, but the Gemara will still rule like Abaye. And we have it a few times in Shas, where the Gemara says Tiyufta, which means totally repudiated, and then the next moment you see that Allah is like them. So the first thing Gemara says, name a ketanoi. Let us say that the argument of Abaye says that if you're a Russia, even for treif, it's a weaker Avera. You also are considered a Russia for stricter ones like money matters, which is Ra'al Shemaim or Ra'al Brius. And Rava says no. If you have a weakness for a weaker Avera, does not automatically mean that you have a weakness for stronger Avera. So if you're a Mumel Lahachis, doesn't mean that you are going to lie or you're steal and lie about stealing when you're hurting people as well as Hashem. So the Chayr is a machlekes Tanaim. Eight Zaymim, Posel, Lechola, Torah, full of Dira. Meir holds, once you found an Eight Zaymim, I don't care for what issue you were found as an Eight Zaymim, you can never be trusted again. You can never be trusted again. However, Rabbi Yossi says, only if you found lying when it comes to din in the nefashos. If you found lying when it comes to money matters, you are acceptable when it comes to matters life and death. Rameir no. Even if you're lying when it comes to money, you can never be trusted again. So Neima Abaye holds like Rameir that even though you found a Russia and a weaker Aveda, you're a Russia for a stronger Aveda. And Rabbi holds like Rabbi Yossi, no. That if you found a Russia and a weaker Aveda, let's say Mammon, if you're not automatically a Russia when it comes to din and fashas. And we can believe you. So the Gemara, and the Gemara explains. Abaye, we do say that one, since you not believe by Kula, by lighter Avedas, but in the Mammon, for example, nor can you believe in the fashas. Same thing Abaye, if you're Mumalahachis, only Ra'al Shemayim, you're also now not to believe when it comes to money matters, Ra'al Shemayim and Ra'al Brius. And even though it's strict, Rabbi says, Rabbi Yossi, you say, but not from Kula to Chumra. Said him, no. Eliba did Rabbi Yossi Kuli Amalipli. According to Rabbi Yossi, there's no question. Rabbi Yossi says that if you were found lying by Dine Mamas, if you found Dine Mamas, then you're not considered lying when it comes to Dine Fashas. Definitely does not hold like Abaye, holds like Rabbi. What that he definitely follows Rabbi, that if you're limited to Mumalahachis, does not automatically mean that you're corruptible. Ki pligi, the argument is within Rameir itself. Abaye says, I hold clearly like Rameir, that an eight zayman for money matters is not to be believed on anything. So if you are even a mumalahachis, you're not to be believed on anything, and you can't be made a witness. But Rava says, the moment. No, he says, when does Rameir say they're only by eight zayman the moment? Why? Because money is harsh. Israel shemayim and lebrius. So therefore, since it's harsh, therefore he says that since you not believe the imams, we don't believe in the fashas either. Aval hoch over here. But in the case of of eating mumer lahachis. All you're harming is your relationship with Hashem, not harming others. Maybe taka, but when it comes to money matters, you could be believed loy. So there's no proof from there. The Gemara, however, includes hilchos kavash the malach hagabayim. What are you talking about? And this can, the Gemara will actually ask, well, didn't you repudiate it? The Gemara is not a kash anymore. Now that we've introduced Rabbi Yossi and Meir, we will say that brisa that you brought before, that is limited only to Russia, the Chamas follows Rabbi Yossi. But if you follow Rabbi Meir holds that even though you found a liar only in money matters, you're not to be trusted in matters of life and death. And that's what Abaye follows. Allah is like Rabbi Meir. The Gemara says, Zahir Rabbi Yossi, that brisa you brought to Rabbi Yossi. Says the Gemara, so what? The Tevin Rabbi Yossi, let it be Rabbi Yossi. But Rabbi Yossi, we have a general rule that whenever the Meir Rabbi Yossi argued, Allah is always like Rabbi Yossi. Says the Gemara, you're right, but Shiny Hossam, this matter is different. The Sosam Latana Karameir, we found a Tana just like Rabbi Meir. So yeah, where? Where do you find a Tana like Rabbi Meir that says that if you found liars, then you're not to be believed in the fascists? Says the Gemara, you heard about Chama. There's an incident where Bar Chama Kotel Nafshi killed him. Look, examine, did he actually kill him? If so, let's gouge his eyes out. That even though we no longer have Mrs. Bezin, no longer have a court that does capital punishment, but nevertheless, I want to punish him because a Bezin has a right from time to time to make punishments if they feel is necessary. Others say it means actually just get him to pay money. Says the Gemara, and third opinion is put him a chayrim, excommunicate. Says the Gemara, so they told him go look. If he committed the crime, we're going to do this the three interpretation of the chulena. Also, they came along two witnesses, and they testified about the kotel that Bar Chama actually committed the crime. Also, Bar Chama went. I said but two witnesses. As he testified by one of them. This is what they said. I saw him stealing a whole kav, a measure of peeled barley. And Chadam almost said, in front of me, he stole the handle of a sword, of a knife, of a sword, of a spear. So now they're both testifying, but not exactly the same thing. But they're both saying that he was a gala when it comes to money matters. The question is, can we believe them as far as crime, murder? This is exactly the Machlek Tamei Rabbi Yossi. Amalei said, "My title. What do you think?" He said, "What do you think?" So Rabbi Abba Yaakov said to Bar Chama, "What do you think that the halacha is like a mayor? So you want to get away scot-free with this, saying that they're not to be believed in the fashists? I want you to know that Mayor Rabbi Yossi, halacha Rabbi Yossi." It sounds like this person was Rami Bar Chama because he's a Talmud Chacham, as we'll see. But Rabbi Yossi said, "Huzim b'dini mominus is kosher l'din fashists." Rabbi Yossi says that if somebody was found liars, dini mominus still believing in the fascists, and they say that you committed the murder. The puppy said, "Hani mili heicha deloy sosem lontana kerameir." The puppy said, "When is this said? Only when we don't find a stam mishnah like Rameir. Here we found a stam mishnah Rameir." Now, we don't know who this Bar Chama is, whether it's Rabbi Chama or somebody else. So they asked him, which Rabbi Meir did you find? You said there's a stam mishnah, an anonymous mishnah that excited with Rabbi Meir that if you found the liar by din and mumnus, you're not to be believing in the fascists. Which Rabbi Meir? Because otherwise we want to follow Rabbi Meir. Which one is it? We learned in the mishnah later on. Anybody that is suitable to be a judge when it comes to matters of din and the fascists is also if somebody is suitable to be a judge of din and the fascists is suitable to be a judge of din and So right now we think that Pshat here is talking about is if somebody is beyond suspicion and they can be a judge for matters of life and death, surely they can be a judge for matters of money. Now money, who said that? If you tell me it's Rabbi Yossi, it's not true. Rabbi Yossi holds clearly that if somebody found a lie about money matters, they cannot be trusted in money, but they could be trusted by life and death. And here it says anybody who's trusted by life and death automatically is trusted in money matters. Can be Rabbi Yossi. The question in Fasha, but in Mamas, Elah must be Ramedi, must be Sameir. It must be Sameir. The Gemara said, "Memai, how do you know? Who told you the pshat here is whether you trust them or not?" There could be another problem here, whether they have the qualities or the criteria to be a dayan. Because there are certain criteria for din and nefashos which are not a requirement by din and mamlas. For example, a ger. A ger can adjudicate matters of money, but it cannot adjudicate matters of life and death. So maybe we're talking about a ger or a mamzer. So my how do you know? Maybe when it says it, if you're suitable to be a judge for matters of life and death, surely you're suitable to be a judge for money matters, but you could be suitable for money matters and not suitable for life and death. For example, a gay or a mamzer is suitable for this, not for that. And I'll prove it to you. Not so safe. Now, those people that are suitable for money matters, but not suitable for matters of life and death. Amai enuro. Why aren't it? Why aren't if? How can it be that they're suitable for money matters and they're not suitable for life and death? If they were found liars in life and death, and surely and cannot be trusted anymore. Surely they cannot be trusted for money matters. So how can ever be a case where they're trusted for life or death and not trusted for money? Must be it has nothing to do with trust. It has to do with criteria. And if it does because they don't meet the criteria by the Fasha, like a Ger Mamzer, but it could still be a judge for ordinary money matters. And the Fasha Amai in the row, the Izim Bedin the Fasha's role of Bedin Mamzer, but even Hakel, everyone knows possible if it's disqualified because we don't trust them, sure we don't trust them for money matters. Ella but we're talking about the caliber of these judges. We're talking about the caliber of the judges, nothing to do with the case. So where do you find a Rab Meir, anonymous mission that cited Rab Meir that if you found to be a liar by Dini Mamonis, you're not to be trusted in the Fashas either. The following. Now we learned absolutely in the following apostle if somebody we had this for the mission, if somebody plays with cubes, with dice or malda, but he's lending money off and we had the two opinions what it means to have these races with the pigeons or lure others into your dovecot. The people who used to deal with merchandise from Shemitah, the grains and all that. And slaves. This is the rule. Call Adis, any Adis. She'ena Isha Kshed Allah. Any Adis that a woman is not kosher for. Avhain Angel, any Adis which require real Adis. That's why a woman is not kosher. Neither are these people kosher. Now, Mani, what are we talking about here? Now, a woman is not kosher for din nefashis or din imamis. So you tell me that this person is not kosher for din nefashis, din imamis, but all they did was a psul of din imamis. So we see that even though you were apostle for din imamis, you nevertheless cannot be believed when it comes to din nefashis. That's from Meir. And even though you're found lying on a smaller thing, we don't trust you for a bigger thing either. If you're Russian, a small thing, you're Russian for the bigger thing. You could be an aid for dinner fashions. She's not kosher. You are kosher. A lot of them made. Kom barchama, stura barchama, noshke akara, kissed him on his knee, the kibla, the karge, the kulish, and accepted upon himself to pay his taxes forevermore. Now, the popular is Chacham, so some say, everyone asks, that's Mamash Sheikha. How can you do that? So someone will say Talmid Chacham anyway didn't have to pay, so didn't really gain anything. Others forget, proof from here that Talmid Chacham, certain taxes they don't have to pay, certain they do. That's why he was paid off. Otherwise, what do you mean? But why isn't it Sheikha? Because he didn't act as a judge. The judge asked him for counsel, for advice, and he did that, which is more like the idea of a toyin. What a toyin does is he does research, finds a basis for certain rulings, but it's the judges who make the final ruling. Now starts the next Mishnah. This Mishnah, in a way, is very similar to a certain section of Amos, which proved, I guess, very pedantic, and that is working out relations. So we have to just imagine that 3 generations. You have a grandfather. I guess we have here a father, parents. We have yourself, and then we have the next generation, children and sons-in-law. So we are going to learn now all the different relationships who are disqualified from being witnesses to each other. Says the Gemara. The following relatives are actually puzzled to say, hey, obviously a father, the pasuk says, obviously a father is not related, is not capable of being an aid for the son or the son for the father. And everything the Mishnah says is the inverse is also correct. So these are the following are the relatives. Achiv, your brother to you and you to your brother. The father's brother, which is your uncle, so your uncle to you and you to your uncle. Your mother's brother, your uncle to you and you to your uncle. Ubal achoisai, the sister, your sister's husband, your brother-in-law, and you to your brother-in-law. Ubal achois aviv, your father's sister's husband, which is your uncle, in-law. Ubal achois imai, and again, your mother's sister's husband is your uncle-in-law. Ubal imai, the husband of your mother, which means your stepfather. Not your father, because it's not your other. His Balima is your stepfather. So you cannot testify for him, nor can he testify for you. The Chamav and your father-in-law, you to him and to you. The Gisai and your brother-in-law, and it says here, Hain, them, Ubeneyan, not to them, not to their children, the Chasnein, nor to their sons-in-law. So in other words, your brother-in-law is the same generation as you, and basically your sister, and then their children is considered second generation to the first generation. That's called 2 to 1. To a great uncle is called 1 to 3. The first generation is the Zayda and his brother, the great uncle. The next generation is your father, and the next generation is the great nephew. The great nephew to the great uncle is 1 to 3. Anyway, here we're talking about the Gisa, your brother-in-law, Hain of name of his names. This is 2 to 1. You're on par with your sister and her husband, and this is one generation below, so it's 2 to 1. Then it says the Chorgoil about it, but your stepson, only you're not allowed to testify for him or he for you, but his children and sons-in-law are not included because he's not really family, just a stepson. Says the Gemara, all of these examples have to do with Rabbi Kiva. Our Mishnah is showing that prior to Rabbi Kiva, we had a much more limiting rule. Only those relatives that you will inherit or will inherit you are forbidden to each other. In other words, the mother's side of the family completely is not forbidden. It was only added later on. Big Machlek is the Rambam and Ramban, whether it's Mahat Torah or whether it's only Midirabban. The Rambam holds only Midirabban. Ramah, inshallah, brings it down. That only Midirabbanan, all these other witnesses, relatives, you're not testify if anyone that you cannot inherit. And the Ramban holds this matter. So then the original mission was Doide, your uncle, Ben Doide, your father, all the males, only those who are suitable that can inherit you. Anyone who is close to you at that time, meaning, let's say had a relative, your brother-in-law, your son-in-law, and then it's Rachik. Either your daughter passed away, or your sister passed away, or they're divorced. Harei ze kosher. They are kosher as long as they were not your relative at the time when it happened, when they saw it, and when they will testify. Rabbi Yehuda says, if your daughter dies, so you have a son-in-law and there were children there. The yesh leibanim in mena, you have children from that from your daughter, but your daughter is no longer alive. So these grandchildren, your only connection is through your son-in-law, who's not biological relative. We will still treat the grandchildren as craven. We'll see in the Gemara later. There's an argument. Then the Mishnah says, "Ha'oyev, your friend, v'hasan, your enemy. Oyev, what's the definition of a friend? Zeh shushbenoi, somebody who took care of your things of the wedding. Soina, what's the definition of an enemy? Kol shaloi dibar imoi, shloi shiyamim be'ela. If 3 days go by and he doesn't talk to you out of animosity, then they're not qualified to be Eidim. They're not qualified to be Eidim. Talking about witnesses here. Amalei, the Tanakama said to him, to Rabbi Yehuda, we don't believe for a moment that a person is going to lie and distort the truth because he hates that other person. When it comes to judges, we want somebody who's unbiased. And yes, if you're an enemy and you haven't spoken to him for 3 days because of your enmity, then you're not qualified as a judge. But as witnesses, we don't believe that you'll lie because you don't like that person. Says how do we know that the Chalal relative cannot say Eidid? It's not about we learned. It says the pasuk. The yumsu avos albanim, that literally means that parents will not die for the children's sins, nor will children die for the parents' sins. What does it come to teach you? Even the parents will not die because on account of the sins of the children. Or children will not die on account of the sins of the fathers. It says already in that very same pasuk, Ish becheta yumasu, that each person will die based on their own sins. When we say that, what? It says avos in plural, two fathers. Abanim in plural, two sons. It means the ages banim. We're talking about the testimony of the sons. And we're talking about over here, two of us will not die on the testimony of either son. One son is a son of a father, but he's also a nephew of the other brother. So we know from here already that one first generation, second generation cannot testify. Father to son, for sure, direct line, and even uncle to son. Yeah, then it says, children will not die on account of the father, means the testimony of the fathers. So more as a question, you tell me that children will not die on account of the sins. He took the pasuk out literally. It says in the pasuk, that will remember and will place the sins of the father and the guilt on the children. So it depends. Also, they're talking about the continuing in the evil ways of the father. Tanya, we learned that if you continue in the ways of your father, continue their sins, then you will be punished not only for your sins but your father's as well. Even the sins of their father, itam yimaku, will disintegrate with you. It's talking about if you continue in their path. It's talking about continuing when they're not continuing. Holding on to when it says ish becheta yemasu, when it says that person the sin will die, when it says on the one hand it says each person will die in their own sins. I'm not have to shoulder the responsibility for your sins. And therefore, but other pasuk seems to say that that they will be punished for the sins of the father. So that's talking about what? And continuing in the father's footsteps. So you want to learn, that we will stumble on each other, and we learn what I'm responsible for each other. That a person is responsible for the sins of the brother to be punished for you're going to be punished for their sins. We learn from here. So in other words, why the chashlu? Why are you going to struggle or you're going to stumble? Is because of the achi, because of your brother's sins. So we answer, and why? Everyone's mixed with each other. Everyone is responsible with each other because of the Sa'adim means mixed with each other. So we answered, Hossam over there, they had the opportunity to protest and object to what's going on, and they didn't. That's why they are culpable. Otherwise, you're not culpable of someone else's sins. So that's how we learn out that two fathers, the son cannot testify on behalf of his father nor on behalf of his uncle. But actually, the pasuk is talking about the parents to the son. So the father to the son, the uncle to the son. How do you know a son to an uncle? Ashkan avos labanim, ubanim la'avos. The choshkan avos la'adodi, banim labanim. Okay, we know that what the father to the son to the father, to the nephew, to the uncle. But how do you know first cousins? And I know the second generation, banim labanim. I know. Im ken lichta kral. Let the pasuk say lo yumsu avos al ben, and we would know one ben to the father, and the same ben to avos to the other person is his father's brother, which is an uncle. So we already know that. So why does it say bonim? To tell you that they cannot testify against each other. My bonim, that feel bonim ladodi, that even what first cousins. We know bonim lahadodi, first cousins. Bonim la'almim non. How do you know that first cousins cannot testify against each other? How do you know they cannot testify against anybody out there in the whole world? Amar Rav Chama says Rav Chama Svari. It actually makes sense. In the Tanya, we learn the following logic. In the Tanya, we learn that the two Eidim will not be found liars and get punished and are punishable unless both of them are found liars. If only one of them are found liars, then they won't be punished. So it seems like the only reason why they both get punished is because of each other. So ultimately they're testifying about each other because that's why they're getting punished. If there would be two separate witnesses, they'd have nothing to do with each other. They wouldn't be punished. So therefore it's as if when they're testifying against the whole world and they have to be able to be found liars, and the only way to be able to be found liars that both are found liars is as if they are involved in each other's punishment, as if they're testifying against each other. And therefore, it's considered, and that's why Banim La'alma cannot testify, because ultimately they're testifying about each other. These are the Banim La'alma Shein Koshin. The only reason why you get punished is because I joined you, so we're testifying sort of together, and each one is affecting the other one. All the time, following that reasoning is very stretched, he says, because now we learn. Let's say you have a kinya chazaka, you have a property for 3 years, and you bring witnesses year number 1, bring witnesses year number 2, year number 3, and then you prove that the property, you say, I bought it, the property is yours. What happens? You have one brother for each year with a stranger. So you have one brother for year number 1 with a stranger, year 2, another brother, third brother, 3 brothers. What testifying is a valid testimony because each year is separate, independent from the following year. But it's the aggregate. Turn out to be liars, then they don't get punished unless you put all 3 together. So how can we accept the testimony in the first place? They're following your logic, they're testifying on behalf of each other. So must be that it's too far removed. They're not testifying on each other. They're giving a testimony, and the Torah says this is what happens. That's not the reason why Bonim cannot testify against the Almos. The question goes back, how do you know that 2 brothers cannot testify about a stranger? 3 brothers, another person joins them. 3 separate groups of witnesses. The to be found liars, they consider like one group. And they all have, you pay whatever has to be paid. And they divide whatever the money is that we try to take away from the real owner. According to your logic, they're all affecting each other's testimony. The Hazam is not from each other. It's whoever of a group of 2 witnesses come and say that you were not, each one of you were not there at the time, they're the ones who are affecting the entire punishment. 2 brothers against the whole world. So how do we know? So, you know what? I'll tell you. We'll learn the technicality of the pasuk itself. It says in the pasuk, "Uben al ovis." Let the pasuk say, "Uben al ovis." It says in the name of Bonim al ovis. When you Bonim al ovis, just say, so the Bonim lo yimsu al ovis. Say Uben lo yimsu al ovis. Or Yinami heim al ovis. Say heim al ovis. My ubonim, 2 sons. Afilu bonim le'alma. So we dash an extra word bonim. Say even 2 sons against the whole world. They cannot say testimony because they are brothers. So Ashkan Krevi, all we know from here is relatives of the father. Krevi, Amy, non Haino, relatives of the mother. On Makra, it says a pasuk, Ovis, today Zim. It says in the pasuk, Ovis twice. It says, La Yumsu Ovis Albanim, and then it says, the Banim La Yumsu Alovis. Because it says twice. And when you 2 families of Ovis, the main Inyan, the Krevi of, if it doesn't only mean relatives of the father, which can yarshin from each other, so we say it's talking about relatives of the mother as well, even though they don't inherit. It extends the prohibition of giving testimony about relatives goes further, even to the mother's side of the family. And I told you the Machlekes Rishonim whether it's Mahatorah Midrabanan. So Ashkvan, all we know from here is we'll just finish the sugya here. Let's chayva. All we know from here is if the pasuk talks about they shouldn't die, so we're talking about things which are going to harm them. So we don't accept testimony from family. But let's chusman on Haino when it comes to in a positive way. Haino you don't. On Makra, it says a pasuk. It says Yumsu today's in. It says twice. La Yumsu Avos Abanim. Ban La Yumsu Al Avos. That's twice. It means if you cannot use it, if you don't need it anymore about punishing, because it already says La Yumsu. So then we'll use it. Even if you want to do it to benefit a relative, we cannot accept you. Okay. All we know from here is when it comes to matters of life or death, relatives can't testify. It says La Yumsu. Bedini Mamas Benon when it comes to commercial law, relatives can't testify. On the present pasuk, Mishpat Echad Yelached. All judgment should be one and the same uniform. Mishpat Hashavi Leched. A judgment that is equal to all of you. We'll stop over here and we'll continue Mitzvah.